I tell you, you were gonna break down? I warn you, didn't I warn you? Better take it easy. Try to find a way out. Better stop believing in yourself. Build it up, we tear it down. Leave our pieces on the ground. See no end, we don't know how. We are lost and we're falling. Hold on to me. Hold on to me. You're all I have. All I have. Down there, there's a light in the darkness. Feel around till you find where your heart went. There's a weight in the air, but you can't see why. Why didn't I tell you we're gonna break down? I want you, everybody wants you. Tell you what you need and give it to your bleeding. Never any feelings for yourself. Build it up, tear it down. Leave our pieces on the ground. See no end, we don't know how. We are lost and we're falling. Hold on to me, you're all I have. All I have. Hold on to me, you're all I have. All I have. Didn't I tell you we're gonna break down? I warn you, didn't I warn you? Better take it easy. Try to find a way out. Never stop believing in yourself. Build it up, we tear it down. Leave our pieces on the ground. We see no end, we don't know how. We are lost and we're falling. Hold on to me, you're all I have. All I have. Hold on to me, you're all I have. All I have. Can you hold on to me? Can you hold on to me? Run away if you can't speak.
With the Kroger app, no matter where you order free pickup, you get the same great deals as you get in our...
Your baby blues, so full of wonder. Your curly cues, your contagious smile. And as I watch you start to grow up, all I can do is hold you tight, knowing clouds will race in, storms will race in, but you will be safe in my arms. Rains will fall down, waves will crash around, but you will be safe in my arms. Storybook
Dreams may not come true, and you are never alone. 'Cause I will always love you. Hi, everyone. Today's a special broadcast. A lot of people's probably going to be tuning in here in a little bit or coming back and watching today's live. Saturday, the family of Keeslyn Royal Roberts will be celebrating her birthday without her. Keeslyn's been missing for a couple of years now, and she went missing from Resaca, Georgia. And Keeslyn's family and friends have put together a Facebook page. So I'm going to kind of give you a brief rundown about Keeslyn. Keeslyn went missing a couple of years ago in February, 2 days after a young man by the name of Caleb Smith went missing. Well, young Caleb was discovered deceased in Resaca, Georgia, not far from the Flying J truck stop. Now, the area of Resaca, Georgia, apparently through a lot of people trying to make every attempt possible in finding Keeslyn, has discovered that the Resaca, Georgia area is a hub for trafficking. What's unfortunate about this, I'm going to share a video from the Finding Keeslyn Facebook page that was put together by Miss Lisa Ratlett Anani, and I do not have her permission, but I think this will kind of enlighten you on what kind of young lady this and how important this young lady is to a lot of people. Somebody somewhere knows what's happened to this young woman. Somebody somewhere knew what happened to Mr. Smith. And I'm getting some feedback, so bear with me just for a brief minute and we'll get this together. It doesn't look like anybody's watching, but just my devoted viewers, which I greatly appreciate. I'm going to go on and I'm going to share a documentary that was created sometime back. And this case kind of hits really close to home. And I don't know why I can't talk today. Apparently, this has really got me a little bit addled. Let me mute out and we'll get started.
Hello, friends. Welcome to the latest installment of our Land of the Lost series. This time, we're delving into the cases of k33sLYN Roberts and Caleb Smith. Now, with all the bizarre and seemingly unexplainable disappearance stories going around on YouTube and other places these days, it's easy to get caught up in them and forget that these are real people, real possible victims who had family and friends, loved ones whose lives were affected in every possible way by the person's disappearance. It could also be true that with all the books coming out and, again, all the videos made and the information online about these cases, it's quite easy to become numbed or jaded to these stories, to these people. Couldn't it also be true that maybe this numbness, this nonchalance, and somewhat boredom with cases like these, one after another, after another, after another, could be exactly what, who, or whatever is involved in orchestrating these disappearances and murders counts on? In this episode, we're going to discuss two different cases that have a strange similarity and also a bit of a connection. Please keep in mind, though, that these are real human beings, and though their cases may or may not be similar to those you've heard over 1,000 times already, be sure and pay attention to the details here. Listen closely and focus on the similarities and strangeness of both of these cases, while being sure to bear in mind that there is one big difference. One of them could very well still be alive, and one of them, unfortunately, has already been found deceased. Let's start with the tragedy of Caleb Smith. On January 15, 2020, Caleb Smith told his grandmother that he was driving to Rome, Georgia, to spend the day hanging out with some friends who lived there. This wasn't anything out of the ordinary for the 21-year-old, so when he requested that she leave the deadbolt to the front door of their house unlocked for him so he could re-enter when he got back home later on that night, she happily obliged and thought nothing of it. Little did she know that while she would speak to her grandson at least one more time over the phone that same day, as he walked out the front door of their house that ill-fated cold day in January, it would be the last time she would ever actually see him alive. Technically, the next day, at 12:32 a.m., Caleb entered the Flying J gas station in Resaca, Georgia. This was on the way to Rome, Georgia. We know Caleb entered this establishment at this exact time because he was seen on the gas station's minimal surveillance footage. 3 minutes later, at 12:35 a.m., Caleb called his grandmother and informed her that he had to pull into the rest stop because he realized he didn't have enough gas to get to Rome as he had initially planned. He told her there was one man sitting at a table on the other side of the restaurant that he was going to ask to help him with $5 for gas money so he can continue on his journey to go and see his friends. Though his phone records have not been made public at this time, Caleb is seen on the same surveillance footage sitting at his table for a few minutes, seemingly sending texts but possibly browsing the internet. Caleb did eventually get up and approach the man. Assumingly, he asked the man for the $5 for gas money as he told his grandmother he was going to do. However, it is unclear whether or not the man gave Caleb the $5, and Caleb actually ended up approaching the man twice in a matter of just a few minutes. It's still unknown exactly what the exchanges were between the two men. No word either on whether or not this man was ever identified or questioned. No information, one way or the other, can be found. After approaching and speaking to this man the second time, Caleb returns to his own table and sits down, facing this unknown man. After just a minute or two, Caleb gets up and leaves the gas station rest stop area, never to be seen alive again.
So, I appreciate the gentleman that created this video. And I appreciate the fact that he made this information public through what he did as an investigator and bringing awareness to what has happened to these two young people. He stated that young Caleb had let his family know that he was going out to visit friends nearby town of Rome, Georgia. He stopped at the Flying J truck stop. There's a Denny's restaurant there at the truck stop. He was playing on his phone. He approached a gentleman there. We kind of see where this pattern's going with some information that we're already aware of. And sounds like to me an issue of maybe young Caleb was lured into a meeting. That was the impression that I got. So let's get through the ad and pick it up from there, because this is a very interesting case. A very interesting case.
When morning came and Caleb's grandmother realized that his bed hadn't been slept in, she became very concerned. If Caleb had planned on staying out, he never would have asked her to leave the deadbolt unlocked for him. She decided to go to the last place she knew him to be when he wasn't answering his phone or returning any of her texts. So she got into her own car and drove down to the Flying J rest stop and searched the surrounding area and the parking lot for Caleb's car. She eventually found his car parked in the Flying J parking lot, but in the back of the Denny's restaurant building, assuming where the back entrance or garbage exit would be. This location could be important because it seems Caleb was parked almost purposely out of view of any of the surveillance cameras. His grandmother states that she didn't immediately get out of her car to search Caleb's car because she saw a suspicious-looking white Nissan that, in her words, she said, freaked her out, and decided it was safer to remain in her vehicle until Caleb's other family members, whom she had just called, arrived. She never elaborated on why this white Nissan was suspicious-looking to her or why it freaked her out so, although it's speculated it was because the windows were tinted very dark and the vehicle had pulled in and parked directly facing her in front of her vehicle, and nobody exited the Nissan. Immediately upon the arrival of the other two family members she had called to come and assist her, the white Nissan pulled out of the parking lot. There's no information regarding whether or not this white Nissan had any involvement in what happened to Caleb. Upon searching Caleb's car, the family found it was unlocked. The cell phone and battery were separated and both in the glove box. The keys to the vehicle were on the floor underneath the seat. Although Caleb had called his grandmother the previous night and explained to her that he was almost out of gas, his car had a half a tank of gas in it when it was found. This would have been more than enough to get him to Rome. Essentially, Caleb called his grandmother to explain about his being low on gas for seemingly no reason. It's been said that he did it to give a reason as to why he would be later than expected coming home if he was stuck trying to get money for gas, but that hasn't been verified. Caleb's jacket was also found in the car. It was a very cold night in Georgia in the middle of January. The family couldn't understand why he would leave his jacket behind. After searching his vehicle, his family called the police to report Caleb as missing. Gordon County Sheriff's Office spent all of the next 2 days, January 16th and 17th, searching the areas around the Flying J rest stop for any additional evidence or for Caleb himself, with no results. It's also worth mentioning here that the GCSO never processed Caleb's car for additional evidence, forensic or otherwise, and immediately released it to the family. On February 3rd, 2020, Caleb Smith's body was found 5 miles away from the Flying J. He was in a marshy and overgrown area of the county between the Sugar Valley and Hill City communities. The sheriff's office reported that a passerby found him in a heavily overgrown and poorly drained area. Caleb was completely naked, and oddly enough, the fire department had been dispatched to that same area his body was found earlier in the day in response to a small brush fire and didn't come across Caleb's remains. This is another odd fact. Despite not knowing whether or not this brush fire was connected to Caleb's death or not, it was an incredibly wet few weeks there in Georgia at the time, so for a brush fire to have been started on its own was almost impossible. The initial report stated, however, no immediate indications of violence were apparent regarding Caleb's body, and the GBI revealed that there were no indications of violence or evidence of foul play. The results of the toxicology report were as follows. Caleb died as a result of methamphetamine intoxication. There's no known information as to whether or not Caleb ever had a problem with any kind of drugs, and the death was ruled accidental. If it weren't for something eerily similar happening to a young woman just 2 days later at the same exact Flying J gas station, that may have been the end of Caleb's story.
Yep, a body and a fire. And methamphetamine. Now, I know a lot of people, especially young people, get themselves involved in some pretty awkward situations from time to time. But let's reflect back on what this gentleman said. Caleb told his grandmother he was going to go out and meet friends in a neighboring town. He stopped at the Flying J, needed a little bit of gas to continue his journey, played on his phone for a little while, approached a man in the restaurant, an unknown individual, and then they left. His grandmother and his mother go out to look for him, find his car, call family members. The Gordon County Sheriff's Department did not process his car or the items in his car. And then days later, his body is found completely naked in a location where a fire, where a fire had occurred. They went out and worked this fire, extinguished this fire in a wet area. Then hours later, they get a second call to extinguish another fire in a wet area. And then that's when they discovered young Caleb's body. Well, we all know things are said. People say things. People do things, especially when it involves the loss of life in a missing persons case. Now, for several days, Caleb's family had no idea where he was at. He had left behind things that he should have taken with him. If all these items were left in his vehicle, and he was discovered deceased naked on the side of the road, they'd perform an autopsy and they discover methamphetamine overdose? Come on. Don't you think they've had to process that young man's vehicle when they found it, that they would have discovered if he had a drug addiction or not? Some hanky shit right there. Some hanky shit. So let's continue. Let's find out what else is going on down there in Resaca, Georgia.
However, when you add up the similarities with the story I'm about to relate to you, even when sprinkling in the differences, one can't help but wonder. We in the true crime community know there's usually no such thing as coincidence, and we all also know that nobody knows this better than law enforcement. So why exactly are they trying so hard to make us believe that coincidence is exactly what seems to connect these two cases?
With next insurance. I can get my
Are we really to believe that a young man, supposedly with enough methamphetamine in his system to kill him, stripped off his clothes and then not only decided to walk 5 miles in the bitter cold, high and naked, but that he managed to do so without calling any attention to himself at all? Is it reasonable to think that not a single person would have noticed a naked young man walking on the side of the road for an entire 5 miles? There are so many facts that just do not seem to fit with the accidental death ruling. Let's review just some of them now. First of all, even if we asked no questions and accepted that Caleb was able to walk all that way without being noticed, despite the condition he was in, both physically and mentally, keep in mind Caleb was found completely naked. This means no socks, no shoes, nothing. Are we also to believe that he could have accomplished this naked and 5-mile walk without not only doing no damage to, but also not dirtying his feet at all? There's no explanation as to why or how the police have been able to reconcile themselves to calling this death, with all the strange facts and evidence, an accident. Caleb was found in a very muddy, marshy area. Not even a drop of mud on his feet. His clothes were never found either, but again, there is no information as to the extent of the police investigation into where his clothes went either. Why wasn't Caleb's family allowed to identify the body? Some say it's simply because of the state of decomposition of the body after being outside the marshland for so long, but others aren't so sure. Remember, this was during the cold winter in January. Speculation and rumors surround this case, and it seems no one knows enough to be able to separate fact from fiction. Our research was only able to find 2 that weren't absolutely off-the-wall wild conjectures and made just a tiny bit of sense. The first of these theories is that he may have gotten into someone else's car to smoke the methamphetamine, a dealer, or perhaps maybe the man he was seen on camera having multiple conversations with, who, to the best of the public's knowledge, was never even found, let alone questioned or investigated in any way. And as tends to happen sometimes to people who partake in this particular substance, Caleb became overheated and started taking off his clothes. Before anyone knew what was happening, Caleb started overdosing, and whoever he was with, if he was with anyone, didn't want to be involved in any way with this overdose death for fear, especially if they were the one that sold or gave it to him. But even if they were just using with him and drove Caleb's body to the marshland and left it there, did whoever this person or people were think about DNA evidence or forensics, and possibly, instead of Caleb stripping himself, did the perpetrators or witnesses strip him of his clothes after he died to eliminate any kind of touch or fiber evidence, eventually coming back to link them or their car to his death? The fact of the matter is, we just don't know, and it seems as though if the investigators in this case have it their way, we never will. Caleb's case is officially closed at this point. 2 days after the incident with Caleb at this Flying J gas station, an eerily and almost shockingly similar disappearance happened. Many people who are familiar with Caleb's case feel like what happened to K33sLYN Roberts, or at least what everyone knows happened to her because she is yet to be found, should have initiated at least a little bit more investigation into his case. They believe it should have led the police, as it did for most of the public, into asking some serious questions regarding that accidental death ruling. So, what happened to K33sLYN? Let's find out. Now, please keep in mind as we go over the details that we know in her case that she is still considered missing and should be presumed alive until it can be proven that she is not. So pay close attention. On January 18th, 2020, a 21-year-old young woman named K33sLYN Roberts was seen at the same Flying J gas station, only she was encountered entering an employees-only entrance in the back on the Denny's side. Remember, this is also where Caleb's car was found. The same Flying J gas station in Resaca, Georgia. Some reports state that K33sLYN was simply told by an employee that she could not be back there in this employees-only kitchen area entrance, and others state that she actually got into some kind of altercation with the person who informed her of this and was then told to leave. There's nothing official to confirm or disprove either one of these statements. Remember, there are no cameras in this part of the parking lot. What is known, however, is that when she was told or asked to exit the area, she was allegedly just standing there, staring blankly out the door she had just entered. K33sLYN had dropped all of her
I really hate saying this, but put a one in the chat if you think Caitlin was trying to get away from someone that was watching her or stalking her. Uh, Now, there are private investigators and there are several organizations that are involved in these two cases. And although this man said that Caleb Smith's case had been closed, new information has surfaced. I don't think this gentleman's going to tell you that during the time that these two young people went missing was approximately 1 month after the January 6th incident. Now, like I said, new information has surfaced. And that's really all I can say about it at this point. So, let's see if we can get some attention to try and find Miss Kiesling, because this is a pretty lengthy video. Well, it's not got much longer to go. So let's go ahead and continue. And then I'll highlight on a few other things that I've discovered.
Pack containing her ID, credit and debit cards, cash and phone charger, and ran off. The employees of either the gas station side or the Denny's side, again, these reports conflict, ended up calling 911 and described Kiesling as a suspicious-looking young woman and described the odd encounter. Kiesling was never seen or heard from again. Where did Kiesling go, and how did she get there without her car? Her vehicle was found 2 days later on January 20th with more belongings inside, parked very near where Caleb's car was found in the exact same parking lot. Witnesses would later come forward stating that they had briefly spoken to Kiesling that fateful night, and she had allegedly told them she was there meeting a male friend. However, this alleged meeting has never been elaborated on. The person she was supposedly meeting and also her boyfriend were questioned by police shortly after she was reported missing, but so far nobody's been named either a suspect or even a person of interest in the case. It's worth mentioning that Kiesling did have a history with drug use, mainly methamphetamine, and had blown off a mandatory probation appointment the day before she went missing, resulting in a warrant being issued for her arrest. Many speculate that Kiesling so quickly fled from the Flying J that day due to not wanting to be there when the police were called, because she would have been arrested on this warrant. But why not take her car? More speculation had Kiesling possibly leaving the gas station with a trucker, but again, this hasn't been confirmed. In early March of 2020, when investigators searched the Flying J, and no idea why it took this long for them to search the area her car was found in and where she was last seen, they did find items of clothing that belonged to Kiesling in a dumpster behind the building. An anonymous witness, who has been said to be fully cooperative with police and not involved in any way to her disappearance, came forward and told reporters that these articles of clothing had been there the entire time, but police were allegedly just getting around to searching for and collecting them as evidence now, and now meaning 2 months later in March.
So, we got a cooperative witness, found clothing, missing young woman, history of drug use, blowed off a probation meeting. Now, I know I don't have but 2 people watching this at this time, but in the time frame that I worked in law enforcement and what I have learned through life now, if someone does not go to their probation meeting, say it's scheduled for today, this afternoon, it's going to take another full day to process a VOP warrant. So someone apparently had this young woman scared absolutely to freaking death that she was going to be arrested if she drawn attention to herself and getting the cops involved. And so I can see where this young girl was scared to death. She was meeting a friend. She blew off a probation meeting. The following day, she's at a Flying J truck stop, scared out of her wits, acting very suspicious. And you say, how often does the trash get picked up? At a truck stop, they usually have a contract where they do it every day or every other day or every 2 to 3 days. Now, I don't know what their trash pickup is there, but I know that they're not going to let their trash build up from a restaurant and a truck stop with that many gas pumps, that many trash cans at the trash pumps, restaurant trash, which averages about 20 bags a day. So this dumpster is going to get filled up pretty quickly. I know the trash container next door to me at the Chinese restaurant, it fills up within a day. So there's going to be if this individual has been so cooperative with the Gordon County Sheriff's Department to let them know that there has been a bag of clothes sitting at a dumpster all this time, this means that bag of clothing was not at the dumpster. It was probably in the little concrete barricade area like you see at most restaurants, where the dumpster fits somewhat snugly in this little constructed little pit area with walls and all that. So, okay. I've worked restaurant work. I've worked convenience stores. So somebody had these articles in their possession and planted this evidence. And that's just based on my opinion and life experience. Give me just a brief minute. I'm going to let y'all finish watching the video.
Unfortunately, this is all the evidence available, at least online in either case. Can it really all be a coincidence that two young people, one a known drug user and the other a possibility, found dead from intoxication from the other's drug of choice, go missing from the exact same gas station under eerily similar circumstances within 2 days of each other? Is it also just happenstance that the two also live on the same street as each other? Now, there's no evidence that they even knew each other, but still, a little too much to overlook if you ask most people involved with or following this case. Where is K33sLYN? Did she meet the same fate as Caleb and just hasn't been found yet? Was Caleb's death truly an accident? And even if it was, someone obviously moved his body at least. And at most, they murdered him and dumped it at the location where it was found. Is K33sLYN running on her own and of her own free will due to fear, again, of being arrested for that probation violation and probable relapse? It's also worth mentioning here that there have been several sightings of K33sLYN at multiple truck stops in various cities across the country. However, none of these have ever been able to actually be confirmed as her. Now, as we mentioned, her clothes were found 2 months after she was last seen fleeing the scene. So where did she go while naked? Also, without anyone seeing her, as the police are insinuating, Caleb took a 5-mile naked walk without being noticed too. Were her clothes really there the entire time, as the anonymous and seemingly cooperative witness claimed to news reporters? Or were they dumped there after the fact, for whatever reason? Currently, there's a $6,000 reward for information that could lead to K33sLYN's whereabouts. If you can help this investigation in any way, or think you have any information, no matter how small or insignificant it may seem, please contact the Gordon County Sheriff's Department at 706-629-1244. So, what do you think of this case? Are these bizarre circumstances simply coincidence, or is there indeed a connection here? I look forward to reading your comments. As always, we ask that you please be respectful in the comment section when discussing this case. Many times, family and friends of the victims do watch these videos and read the comments. So please don't say anything that you wouldn't say if it was your family member or friend in this circumstance. In closing, be good to yourselves and each other. I'm Steve Stockton, and I'll talk.
Okay, well, I'm kind of glad. Hey, Don K, how are you? Well, thank you very much. So we've got one missing girl, blonde hair, blue eyes. Let me share my screen. I'm going to go ahead and take her down. Bear with me just for a minute. I'm still new. I'm still struggling. Hold on. So if y'all hear a bunch of background noise in the back, we got something going on next door to me. It's the thrill of living in the heart of the city and across the street from the police department. Golly bum, there's so much activity. All right, can you still hear me? Can you still hear me? Am I muted out? Did I mute myself out? Did I mute myself out? No, I did not. All right. So the Charlie Project is a wonderful organization in assisting with missing persons cases. So the Charlie Project, kudos to these guys. They're awesome. K33sLYN Roberts went missing January 18th, 2020. She went missing from Resaca, Georgia. She is deemed an endangered missing. White female, blonde hair, blue eyes. Her date of birth is incorrect. K33sLYN's birthday is actually this Saturday. No, I may be wrong. She just celebrated a birthday. They're going to have a birthday memorial service this weekend. Sorry. She is approximately 5'1", 5'2", approximately 117 pounds. She's a Caucasian female, blonde hair, green hazel eyes, which is bluish green. Roberts has gauged piercings in her ears and a tattoo on the inside of her right forearm in the design of blue waves, green, and yellow sea turtles, and a yellow hibiscus flower with the words, "Love yourself first," in the script. Photos of the tattoo are posted with this case summary. Can you see all of the images? Because I cannot click on each individual one. It is a party? Okay. Okay, so details of disappearance. I've got a jumpy mouse. I'm going to have to put it in a trap if it don't stop acting up. Okay, so the details of disappearance. Roberts was last seen at the Flying J truck stop in the 200 block of Resaca Beach Boulevard in Resaca, Georgia on January 18th, 2020. She went into the kitchen where customers were not allowed and got into an argument with an employee. The staff called the police, and Roberts fled the scene before they arrived. She dropped her backpack, which contained cash and her phone charger, wallet, car keys, debit card, and driver's license. She has never been heard from again. 2 days later, one of Robert's relatives found her car in the parking lot of the truck stop with some of her belongings inside it. Some of her clothes were found hidden in a bush by the dumpsters in the back of the restaurant, but her cellular phone has never been found. Whoa. A 21-year-old man named Caleb Nathaniel Smith had disappeared from the same truck stop on January 16th, 2 days prior to Robert's disappearance. On February 2nd, his body was found in a marsh in Gordon County, Georgia. Authorities could find no evidence that Smith and Roberts knew each other or that their two cases were related. Prior to her disappearance, Roberts had gotten mixed up with a bad crowd and had gotten involved with drugs. However, her father said she was getting her life back on track and regularly reported to her probation officer. After she went missing, a warrant was issued for her arrest for probation violation. She is considered missing under suspicious circumstances and her case remains unsolved. This was updated February 4th, 2021. Okay. What I can tell you is, based on information collected, Mr. Roberts was given the runaround on filing a missing persons report. Because K33sLYN lived in one county and she went missing in another county, local law enforcement kept bouncing her parents back and forth because at this time, K33sLYN is deemed an adult. I've witnessed this in other cases. I've even had officers tell me this on the phone. They're an adult. They have a right to leave and come and go as they wish. This is what makes adult missing persons cases so difficult versus that of a missing persons case related to a child. It took them how many days to find Caleb? He went missing on the 16th and wasn't found until February the 2nd. And from what I would have been told, and since his case was closed, that young Smith's body was not badly decomposed. And that the condition of his body did not match up with anything. And the man in the video even said that it's wintertime. The terrain is hard, possibly frozen during this time, and I'm pretty sure it was. That boy's feet would have been messed up. Scratches going through that brush, walking around. Shit, everybody that's grown up in the South knows what sawgrass is. That shit'll cut you up. So, right there allows me to make the assumption that that somebody held this young man in a moderately safe location for a few days before tossing him to the side. And for a fire, yeah, I mean, his feet and legs would have been torn up. K33sLYN's father's name is Eric Roberts. Mr. Roberts has been questioned. Everyone involved has been questioned. Let me see if I can do this. Did it change? Okay. Let's go back into her Facebook page. There's a lot of good information on the Finding K33sLYN page. Let me get it pulled up so you can watch. Bear with me just for a second. I'm trying to get something pulled up for you. Does anybody have any questions? Want an open discussion? I'll drop a link. Stop screen share. Petey, it doesn't look like but just us watching, love. I just hope enough people go back and watch and pass this around that Keeslyn's still missing and there's still unanswered questions. And there's been a couple of confessions made to having certain individuals in this general location at the time that these two went missing and one was discovered. So I greatly appreciate those who are watching. I hope to be able to continue from time to time to be able to focus and place emphasis on our missing loved ones. I want to put everyone involved in thought and prayer, both good and bad. And I really hate to say it that way, but after doing this for a number of years, it's very bittersweet. Very bittersweet. To have so much compassion and empathy and knowing that the majority of these families want their loved ones home with them and that they find closure and justice all in the same sentence. So I greatly appreciate everyone watching, and I'm going to play a little bit of music and then we're going to close out. And again, I greatly appreciate everyone watching. Y'all have a wonderful evening. Keep these missing in your prayers. Just bear with me. I'm still working.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday to you. Surely we'll be together, one sweet day. I never assumed you'd always be there. I took your presence for granted, but I always care. I miss the love we always look to a brighter day. When I lay me down to sleep, you will always listen as I It is our fate to crave what is given to another. The Iron Throne is the most dangerous seat in the realm. The threat of war